Hey,
Sarah.
So this is a discussion, or a follow-up discussion on the using the funds for the American Recovery Act. So in the last board meeting, we were discussing what to use the funds for. An idea came up that we could potentially use it to offset the 20% match that businesses would have to cover with the Open for Business grant that the state is doing now. Per your request, I got a hold of a few businesses to see what they would be applying for. And right now, after getting some rough estimates from about 5 businesses that are going to apply, it's looking like it's about somewhere between $600,000 and $700,000. So I think my request would be if we were going to use those funds to offset that by 10%. That way, the businesses would be paying 10%, and then we would be paying 10%, which would equal that 20% match, which is still a great deal for them.
So just to summarize a little bit, we've already got several businesses. I think Sarah's still working with a couple of other businesses. It could possibly go up as much to $800,000 or $900,000. When we talked about the American Rescue Act funds, again, one of the suggestions that we put forward was we could use some of those American Rescue Act funds, which is to help businesses, to offset their 20% match, cut that in half. So the cost of the town from the American Rescue Funds, I think we've still got a balance of about $90,000 in that fund after we gave 50 to the preschool and 20 to the radio station. So we would be paying 10% of that out of the American Rescue Funds. That's anywhere from $60,000 to $80,000. And then the individual business owners would cover the other 10%. Now, it still has to be approved by DOLA, by the state. But this is a great benefit for both businesses that want to make those improvements.
And can you give us a high level of kind of what the businesses are asking for, or what exactly this is going to do for them?
Sure. So the program is focused on facade improvements and energy efficiency. So a lot of the businesses I'm seeing, they're putting in new windows, doors, different lighting, like energy efficient lighting, signage. One of them was Hilly's, and they're gonna fix that that wall that we've been wanting them to work on for so long. But yeah, a lot of it was exterior, and then like I said, the new windows and doors and stuff like that.
And that this is just an update.
It is, but we did want to get consensus from the board of whether or not you do in fact approve using those American Rescue Act funds as a matching to that 20% grant. You pay 10% of that 20% requirement from the business owners. We talked about it. We never got a little yes, we approve using that or not. So we just want to verify that that's still going to be valid.
We have the money.
We have the money.
Yeah, I don't see.
What it's supposed to be spent on.
Right.
So, yeah.
What happens if COVID comes back though? And we have
More
to use
money
that
will come,
for
of course.
something else?
Probably more.
Government will print more money.
You know, okay. Not that it's gone, but you know, I know that Starbucks now is requiring masks, so then Safeway's back on the mask thing. I'm just wondering
Oh, it's coming back.
if it's gonna be.
Let's not plan for it.
So I'm not hearing any objections.
I'm not trying to plan for it, but
So to recap, we're not hearing any objections, so we go ahead and proceed as if, you know, that we can use those American Rescue funds.
I think it's a great use of that money.
Yeah. Okay, Sarah, you get to go ahead.
Thanks. I know the businesses are really like looking forward to this, so I'm sure you'll be hearing from them personally.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yep.
Okay, we are now at Livestock. This was just added yesterday?
Yes, Andy had asked me, actually, he's asked a couple of times about, reviewing our ordinances relating to livestock and chickens and so forth. So I put together a staff report and basically just took excerpts right out of our municipal code. For example, livestock operations, excluding small horse or cattle boarding lots or pastures currently located in the town. So in other words, you can't have livestock unless it's pastures currently located in town. So that kind of points toward the cow issue there in Cousins Meadow. And as far as keeping a fowl goes, I'm not even sure that anybody, do we have a license for that? You can
No.
just simply do that. So we haven't had any nuisances or any complaints about any kind of chickens in town. The question has come up a couple of times about the cattle. But again, I think if you look at the ordinance and you look at what I had written in there, look at the definition of a pasture versus a meadow, I don't think it's prohibited in our municipal code to have cattle out there, but again, I think there's some recommendations that we could look at and alternatives. You could say we're going to go ahead and say we're going to prohibit under section 9-2-350. I'm not sure that's going to be a very stable argument. Or you can address cattle and livestock operations under the conservation easement, which would be my recommendation. But Andy, did you have anything in more
No,
particular?
I think that it shouldn't be targeted or specifically for any piece of property. I think that it should be a regulation not based on trying to ban cows and larger livestock from the community, but to base it on grazing plans and on an agricultural plan that could address issues like density, carrying capacity of the range, wetland issues, if there's a wetland area involved. So I just think some professional planning, because obviously, I don't think these type of restrictions fit well in a rural environment, but we're a organized community and more densely developed.
Right.
And I think in those regulations, there should be some review at the public body level before an operation begins to allow the neighbors to have input at least. So no, I don't. It's not specific for any area. Obviously, we've had feedback on a specific case out in Grand Park, but I think that this should be a generalized regulation that has to do with the whole community, because of course there's a lot of undeveloped Fraser municipal land, or land within the municipal boundaries on the west side of the tracks too, and that's where the cows do move. And right now, that's a great area for them, but that's going to be subdivided and become part of the community too. So I just think some planning. I mean, Troy Neisberger, the owner of the cattle, has talked to me on several occasions, and I'm not opposed to this use in town. I just think that there needs to be more planning in town than there would be in a large rural environment. So.
I like hearing it at night. I like hearing the cows at night.
Yeah.
I like them there.
Well,
Do you live right next door to them? No. So,
Pretty close.
yeah, well,
I mean, they're not
Yeah,
shitting in my
yeah.
yard like or whatever,
one, and that's that's one point too. Colorado is it's the property owner's responsibility to fence cows out of their property. But of course, I believe, and then this is, you can cross-check this, Ed, but I think a municipality has the right to have more restrictive ordinances than what the state does. And so that'd be a good, for instance, that would there be a good fenced enclosure so that a bunch of different property owners aren't faced with building their own fences to try and keep cows out of their yard. So.
the definition of meadow and pasture, they're both the same to me, except when you put cattle on it, it becomes like pasture.
And that's the wetland impact. Yeah, I think that the wetland can turn into and that's the core definition too, is that a pasture is not a wetland. So, And that, because it could be irrigated and the irrigation could be, that's a good rule because the irrigation can create a wetland and you don't want a rancher to be faced with not being able to use his pasture because his irrigation has created a wetland. So, but you want a wetland in town, I would hope to remain a wetland. So,
But what I was going to say,
sorry.
our code says, or pastures currently located within the town. And that was in 2018. So I was thinking that pastures after 2018 were not allowed.
I think that'd be a Rod question.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There he is.
You're in the top
Well,
left there.
I think the answer given previously is correct, that the town has the authority to pass regulations in this area. But specifically with regard to Grand Park and Rendezvous, there was a provision in the annexation agreement saying that any agricultural uses could continue. So the question there is, what were the agricultural uses in 2003? You may not be able to change that at this point in time without some change to the annexation agreement. But generally, I agree that the town has authority to regulate in that area. So if you want to say pastures existing prior to 2018 are allowed, but not after, I think you can do that. But I don't know that that's what the code says. I'm not sure how it would be interpreted without looking more specifically at it. So I don't know if I can answer your question, Eileen.
Okay.
But Rob, the annexation agreement also says that the annexation agreement is subject to future regulations of the town. So if we pass regulations having to do with cattle in the community, that it would be that prior use would still be subject to those regulations, I would assume.
Well, yes and no, but it does specifically say the agricultural uses on the property may continue. So I don't know that you could change your regulations to specifically contradict that. Interesting question. But I agree with Ed. Maybe we deal with it in the conservation easement.
At least that specific case, but I still would like to have regulations that could deal with this use in the community. So, and that could solve the meadow versus pasture question just by the grazing plan. So that deals with wetland issues and the grazing plan. We talked about possibly CSU, the extension office, or there could be, there ought to be resources available to allow us to have some expert testimony on carrying capacity of pastures and areas where the cattle are.
I'm still pretty new here, but I'm not sure if there's any other areas within the town limits that can be used for.
How many acres on the west side of the track?
1,200. How many
1,200?
acres are on the other side of the track? Grand Park?
1,200.
I don't know.
Yeah.
1,000. There's a lot of acres where this can happen. Basically all of it.
That's where I like the cows, by the way.
Okay, so it sounds like we need to do some more. No, we're not going to take public comment. Yeah.
There's too many moving parts in it
Yeah.
to make a decision now.
Sure, I'm glad that we discussed it. I appreciate that.
And I do think that A4 addresses it there anyway.
Okay.
For other places, but yeah, okay. But the area
And
you're talking about.
I'm personally not opposed to having cattle in.
Oh, I'm not either.
communities.
And you know,
having a feedlot in the middle of town is different than having cattle.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, I went the west side, like where you see the cows and the Byers Peak and everything like that. I like them there.
Okay, anybody else have any comments on this from the board?
Thank you.
Okay, remote meeting policy. Is this Antoinette?
That's me. So there's two different policies here. And the first one is the remote meeting policy by the Town of Fraser public bodies. So this was initially brought before the board just before COVID hit, and we shelved it for the time being as that was an emergency declaration by the town. So now we wanted to bring it back. And really it's about the Fraser Town Board and the committees being able to participate in the meetings remotely. And just some of the challenges that brings. You know, when you participate remotely, you can't really see any items that might be presented physically at a meeting very well. You can't really cue in to really what people are saying when they're, you know, on a screen or they have their screen turned off. You don't really know what their body language is. It can undermine the decision-making process, particularly in a quasi-judicial matter, such as a public hearing. And it should be used, it's intended to be used infrequently and occasional substitution for a physical attendance. So, you know, within the statement of the policy, it really talks about some of the specifics about, in order for that to work, what should be in place. You should be able to have clear communication 2 ways between the person that's not physically here and the person that is here physically. You cannot neither participate nor vote remotely in a quasi-judicial public hearing. You must be physically present to establish a quorum within a meeting. Remote participation does constitute an actual attendance for purposes of compensation. We should always provide a reasonable accommodation for somebody that becomes disabled and cannot physically attend meetings. And, you know, again, the mayor manager may suspend these policies due to an emergency condition, which is what happened with COVID. And then the public body may, by majority of vote of the quorum present, declare an elected or appointed officials repeated use of remote participation excessive and deny them the privilege to use the remote participation for a specific meeting or meetings. And if that is declared, then that member is allowed to have a advance notice and an opportunity to participate in the body's discussion regarding excessive use of the continuation of remote participation, provided that the elected appointed official is provided notice of the date and time of a planned body's discussion, and the member's inability to be available for participation in that discussion shall not preclude the public body's authority to discuss and decide whether such elected or appointed official use of remote participation is excessive. And if you do need to participate remotely, we ask that you contact the town clerk and the town manager to arrange for remote participation prior to posting date of any meeting agenda to help assure that a quorum will be established. So it's really just to try to get the public body in one location for a meeting, so that everybody can participate, you know, and really see what's going on with the other members, and to help make sure that there's always a quorum, because often I don't know, or the mayor may not know, people aren't going to actually be here until the meeting is actually almost about to happen. So that can be a challenge also. And that has happened several times for our planning commission, that we didn't know there wasn't a quorum until basically almost the moment the meeting was supposed to start. And that's just not okay for public hearings when they're posted and we're trying to have meetings. We've had some challenges with this in the past. So
The one language you said becomes disabled, could
If-
that be is or becomes disabled in case somebody that's disabled is elected?
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sorry, Anthony, just for
Mhm.
clarity, because you said this came up and was proposed before COVID.
Mhm.
It was like right about the time
Yeah,
that
pretty
COVID
close, yeah.
started. Yes,
So this is not the first time most of the board has seen this, right?
correct. It might have been prior to Brian. I'm not sure Brian has seen this. Yeah. We did make a couple minor tweaks within it. But yeah, this is not the first time they've seen it.
So the quasi judicial question there talked about the elected appointed official may not participate or vote remotely in a quasi judicial meeting.
Mhm.
How is
I believe that that was something that Rod had said before previously, that if a elected official or appointed official is not physically here, that they should not vote in a quasi-judicial public hearing. Is that correct, Rod?
Yeah, that seems to be the consensus, and I think the reason for that is that you've got due process considerations in a quasi-judicial proceeding, and someone could claim that they didn't get due process because they couldn't effectively cross-examine someone or something along those lines. So basically, the consensus is it's a no-no for quasi-judicial proceedings to have a board member participate. You know, they can listen in perhaps, but they should not be voting on a quasi-judicial matter remotely.
How has municipal courts and criminal courts been dealing with this, with COVID and remote and, you know,
Well,
as,
they have been doing it remotely, but that was because of COVID. I don't know if there would be an objection after the emergency has passed.
So we're not talking about general meetings. We're just talking about quasi,
quasi-judicial, that's in your public meetings. Where you're-
any public meeting.
No, it's a
Not any
public.
public meetings, but it's a public hearing. For example, planning commission, when they're making a recommendation to the board of trustees, that's a quasi-judicial process there, so.
Subdivision and land use.
Yeah,
And also liquor license
Comments,
hearings,
yeah.
marijuana
But a meeting
license
like today
hearings.
would not be qualified as a quasi-judicial.
so Parnell, or if Katie was on, they could vote today. Okay.
According to this.
Does that mean all the presenters have to come live as well?
Don't you have a different policy on that there?
Yeah, so there's two different policies because they were a little bit different, but the one we'll talk about next is a public meeting participation policy. And that one does address presenters of meetings. This one is just specifically remote participation by the Fraser public bodies, which is the Fraser Town Board and the Planning Commission at this time. And that would include the Board of Adjustment also, or any other commissions that could come in the future that are not currently here. The board could make or create.
I'll address both of these. First, the first one, for all of us. I mean, technology is here to stay, guys.
Right.
Like people are doing Zoom meetings all over the world every single day. We just need to get better at presenting. So like if somebody brings something in, let's have a camera that we can spin around so that people online can see it. I think I don't know. This is the way the world is moving, and we're just going to be left in the dust, and we're going to be behind the times and be perceived as old if we don't allow people to participate via Zoom. And then the public piece, to not let people participate, like we want as much public input as possible. And if people don't want to leave their house and they have the ability to see stuff remotely, then why should we stop them? I want more participation, not less. So I'm against both of these.
How about the quasi-judicial though? Is that
Can't be against it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm against it. I mean, my daughter was adopted via a Zoom international adoption hearing. So like, if we can do that, I think we can vote for something here locally. I don't know.
I think it's a step backwards. We've learned a lot through Zoom and COVID, and I think it's been positive.
Mm-hmm. Not to mention we spent like thousands of dollars of
Right, and how
public's
much
money is on this new stuff.
And like when our water attorney, we probably pay a lot more to have him come here.
Yeah.
Probably.
We do.
Yeah,
And his presentation is fine over Zoom.
right.
But I do understand though how we could open ourselves up for liability in a quasi-judicial hearing. That's the one part that I think we could at least separate out from this and have a little bit more discussion about. So I agree with your points completely, but I do wonder about the importance of a land use decision that is held in basically a courtroom type environment. So that's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, I'll leave that to the legal expert. But
Well, that's what Rod's
yeah.
telling. Yeah.
I'm looking in his direction. But yeah, so if that's the case, then I mean, I can't get around that. But I
Yeah.
think
I can do some updated research on that, but I was just based on what we had gone through a year ago when we looked at this before. That was the consensus at that time, but there has been legislation during the last year or so during COVID where they have relaxed a lot of the rules, and they may still be applicable. So if the board feels strongly you want to do quasi judicial votes by remote participation, we can look at that.
I think we should at least look into it.
I agree.
Any further? I'm all for public input as well, but I've got to tell you, it's not any fun running a meeting with the way it is. And I know this is, I'm old, Brian, but it's, having that face-to-face interaction with somebody means a lot.
It's-
And for people to take shots at you
yeah,
on there without identifying themselves is, in my opinion, not okay.
yeah.
So
And
I think that we should at least from the public's side, they have to identify themselves if they want to address. Otherwise, they can listen.
I'd be totally fine
That-
with that. In
that
fact,
is-
I would say if people can't figure out the raise your hand button, then they need to come here in person.
Yeah.
And that way we don't have to call on people with phone numbers and stuff like that.
Right.
So I do want to point out a situation though, and a reason why some people have been reluctant to identify themselves. And
We know. We don't have to.
well, it's a provision in a homeowners association document from Grand Park that homeowners out there are not allowed to object to alignments or changes in the master plan as it relates to property outside the community or without the founder's prior written consent. So they open themselves to civil action. And I would trust that Clark would not do that. But I understand that when you've got this written into a document that opens you to civil liability, that you're nervous about it.
Well,
We
we have
make anybody
YouTube.
that comes here sign in with their name and then.
But
how-
this
if
gives
they
them an
live in-
option to, how
Well,
can
I'd
somebody
write
give us,
an anonymous letter, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But
it's a tough one.
to go out for somebody to go at you on Zoom under an alias.
Yeah.
In my opinion, is not okay. And maybe everybody could disagree with that for
Yeah.
sure, but I don't think that's all right. I think that we should, if you're going to address the board, you should identify yourself and whether you live in the town of Fraser or not. But that's me. I'm only one person.
So, Winter Park does run their Zoom meetings where you are required to contact the town clerk to get the actual password to get into the meeting. So that way they are able to record who it is that's requesting that information. Again, you could say whoever you could give a false name just as easily, in my opinion, to get that password to get into those meetings. So that is one way to manage people that do want to attend the meeting virtually. It is an additional option.
It's more work on you though.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Well, just a thought too is that the way that Winter Park can do it, they're doing it, and something that we can maybe add on to that is if we have an approved list of who's joining our meetings, there's a way to do that where basically if you have a list of people who want to attend via Zoom, which this does not also disrupt the YouTube stream. We're still looking at using all this equipment to provide a YouTube stream so people can see the meetings. If they're not able to attend them, they can still check it out afterwards. They're available for 6 months with the channel for Town of Fraser. But then with the registration process, such as what Winter Park does, we can still have a list of approved members to speak, and they can register. They're provided with the passcode, and then we only allow people that are on that approved list to join the live Zoom meetings to provide public comment.
So it acts like a sign in.
Mhm.
In some way. That really-
Yeah, I don't want to put more work on you guys. I would say if you can look down the list and see a first and a last name, you keep them in, and if you don't, you kick them out, and they can rejoin and put their full name in.
Well, you can come to a meeting and put any name on that list also, and
Sure.
nobody's reading that list, so I don't. and
Yeah,
I know what
mean,
you're
I
saying,
read
yeah.
that list every time.
Yeah.
I do.
Last,
I like to know who is
So-
addressing me.
Mhm.
So, yeah. I want to know who my community is. And I think that the community should be able to approach me and communicate to me. So they don't need to. Yeah.
I noticed that our signatures were not accurate on the last meeting's list. People were here that didn't sign in.
So in recap, you're not necessarily in favor of these two proposed policies for remote meetings, unless we can go revisit that as far as, how we did the sign in, maybe copy what Winter Park is doing. And I would say if the board is really want to pursue this technology and continue that, which as a public servant myself, I like the idea of people being able to participate. Then we can also look at in our budget for next year, maybe we could add those extra features that make that a little bit more seamless, because it is pretty labor intensive. So I'm struggling over there, trying to get my presentation earlier. And switching roles and starting this, and it's pretty labor intensive.
I would vote no on both of these as they are written right now because of various reasons. I think we need to revamp them and come back.
Why is it the 6 months that they're gone after?
That's written in the Colorado statutes, that you
That-
only have to keep the recordings for 180 days.
Right. That's as long as we have to keep them.
Mhm.
But I know Fort Collins goes for years. And it's not really a space issue, right?
Well, if we're saving them on YouTube, which is where we are now starting to save these.
They're there forever.
If that's what the board would like, is for them to be forever, then that's something that could certainly be discussed. I just don't think it has been.
I know that I've wanted to go back to meetings that are longer than 6 months, and
I would caution against keeping recordings forever, simply because public records requests could be overwhelming at some point.
Maybe a longer period of time. I mean, so
what,
not forever, but maybe 2 years or
5 years.
5 years.
Well, the state has disposition guidelines for keeping public records. Ordinances are forever. Utility bills for a certain amount of time. I don't know what the minutes are forever.
Minutes, ordinances, resolutions are all forever. Agendas.
But minutes could qualify as that forever as opposed to, because at some point you do have to pay for storage either in the cloud or offsite or whatever that is. Video is
Not cheap.
very data.
yeah.
intense.
Okay, it sounds like neither of these are happen as is. So maybe we can give you some feedback and we can rewrite them or something.
The one piece that sounds like you're really struggling with, though, Antoinette, is trying to get an accurate count for people coming to meetings
Mhm.
as far as the board members. Because I know you've been faced with the planning commission, especially
Mhm.
with public notices, everything goes out and suddenly you don't have a quorum, and that's not
Mhm.
fair to anybody. So if there could be some impact to that, if a person does that, twice, for instance, they could lose their board seat. I think we do have to have some pretty strict rules about attendance at meetings and letting everybody know that you're not going to be there. That's the main thing. Not all of us can be at every meeting, but all of us should be able to tell several, at least a couple weeks ahead of time that we're not going to be at that meeting. So unless there's a family emergency, of course.
I think I've missed 2 meetings in
Yeah, I have, all of us have been good, but I know,
14 years.
but I know she's been challenged with having everybody in the room, or close to it, all the notices, it's expensive for an applicant to put together everything they need for a meeting to happen, and the meeting doesn't happen. That's not professional. So if there's a way to address that, possibly that's a specific problem that we could maybe look at some remedies for. So
You can look at our municipal code. It talks about, board meetings and planning commission meetings.
in attendance, yeah.
You could throw language, if it's not in there, you could throw language that if you're gonna be missing a meeting, to contact the chairman or the mayor of the board meeting or the chairman of the planning commission.
Mhm.
And then they can keep track of what the quorum is.
But there ought to be a way to solve the problem if there's a person that's causing a problem. So
I believe there is. I
Yeah.
believe we do.
We can remove.
They can't do it, but
Sure.
trustees can.
So is that the main point that we want to bring back?
well, it
Is
sounded like
is the
that was one that
quorum
you're asking for.
portion
so,
of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we research if we already have that ability? Because it sounds like we may already have that ability.
It's written in the statutes that like the board can remove a board member with due process.
Well, there we go.
And most of the planning commission is appointed by the mayor, and I believe the mayor. Not positive.
Just
on
sounded, from what
the
you were saying, I
planning
thought it was a
commission,
problem. If it's not a problem, don't worry about it. So
I can't remove.
but I don't know that you
personally,
can remove.
no.
I know that the
I can appoint, but I
you can
don't.
appoint, yeah, probably the planning commission is probably, I'm gonna assume it's a similar process to the board. The
I think the
committee
board-
could choose to,
I mean, we should need to
commission
research.
could choose to remove a commissioner with due process. Rod, could you speak to that?
I think it's in the code, but I don't know. I don't recall specifically what it says. But
A little more research.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Next is resolution 2021-0801, letter of agreement for legal services, Whitmer Law Firm. Kent is here in the room with us. But I guess it's now public, right, Rod?
I assume.
Yeah, public. So Rod is stepping back as the attorney for the town of Fraser, and it's going to be a process. He's going to work with Kent and his firm, and Kent, if we agree to tonight, will be the legal representation for the town of Fraser. In a nutshell is what's going to happen.
I hope we can note that Rod's retiring and is leaving in with all of our best wishes for sure. So he's been I think, a great town attorney
Yeah.
for a long time.
Yeah.
30 years, Rod? Or,
He's not leaving quite yet.
Got a couple of months left.
Yeah, he's got a few months left.
yeah, but I mean, the reasons are,
Yeah,
or
he wants to fly his airplane more.
that's right.
Travel with the grandson, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
A little clarity. Of course, we've had a meeting with Rod in the past. We talked about his plans and his recommendation. And the fact that Rod would agree to stay on as a consultant, for at least a year, so that we can, with these issues that we've got currently working, to keep that momentum going. The date on this letter of engagement is on or around October the 1st, which coincides with when Rod would like to retire. The reason I'm bringing it to the board now instead of waiting further is, of course, Rod is traveling across country, across the U.S. in an RV right now. And I felt it would be advantageous if during his absence, if we had a backup plan for an attorney. I talked to Kent. Ken, you can speak to this as well. He's agreeable that we could do this on like an hourly basis or something like that until we can officially get the blessing and you get that formal appointment from the town.
If you can just step up to the podium and
Identify yourself. for all
identify
those people.
yourself, because we want to know who's addressing us.
Sure. Kent Whitmer. So to your question, to give a little bit more background too on the plan for transition that Rod and I have worked out, he's, as Ed mentioned, he's going to be a consultant for a year. So I anticipate, leaning on him heavily. I'm not going to be able to step in here and replace 40 years of experience, from the word go. So I'm going to be looking to Rod a lot. I do have a pretty good background myself and a fair amount of experience myself, but I don't know, the intricacies of this representation right here. I don't know your guys' history. So we'll have Rod available. I haven't really talked to him about the specifics about, is he going to Zoom in on meetings? Am I going to attend meetings? Are we going to, split it where we're both at these types of get-togethers, that sort of thing? We'll work all that out. But in the interim period between now and October 1st, when Rod, more or less cuts all ties with practicing law except for his consultation with me, I'm available in whatever capacity. I mean, I can do as much or as little as you need or as Rod needs. And, just to answer any questions about my background or experience, happy to do that too before you make a decision if you have any questions.
Great. Thanks. Any questions?
I'm going with Rod's recommendation.
So Rod and I have met with Kent personally at Rod's office. We've been on conference calls together. That we even had one today at 4:00. And Kent has been wanting to come to the meetings, to attend, to get up to speed and to participate, just getting more knowledge. And Rod has been very good about sharing that information. And I'm hoping that Kent's the sponge that I think he seems to be soaking it up pretty good.
Oh yeah, I'll get there. Nothing that you guys do is scaring me in the least. I've dealt with these issues for many, many years. I just don't know the specifics of your issues, but I'll get there.
Great. Okay. Motion?
I'd like to move we approve resolution 2021-0801, letter of agreement for legal services, Whitmer Law Firm.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Thanks. Kent.
Great, thank you. I'll do my
Welcome
best.
aboard. Yep, thank you.
Welcome aboard.
We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, now we are at open forum. This is where the public can address the board on business not on the agenda. Everybody will have 3 minutes and one shot at it. So if anybody from the Zoom would like to raise their hand and address the board, now's the time. Digitally raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised. Anybody from here? Yep, go ahead.
Hi, Clark Lipscomb. What's your beef with cattle?
Funny.
I like beef.
Why is Fraser against ranchers and ranching? Andy, I don't
I'm
understand.
not-
I don't know of any cattle issues. And I have to tell you, man, I have people constantly come up to me and go, it is so cool to see cattle back in those fields. I live next to the cattle. I have homeowners that email me all the time that live next to the cattle, love it. So it seems like you're singling us out on a really non-issue that somehow you've made up in your mind as an issue. Cattle maintain the fields exceptionally well. They're a great maintenance tool. They also are one of the best fire prevention means that we have. You can imagine last year's fires if we'd had 3-foot tall dry hay fields sitting out there with the big fire blaring over fires. I might be a little concerned. I had zero concern because it was golf course like with water running it. I think it's barking up the wrong tree, Andy. Section 17.1 of the Rendezvous 03 annexation agreement says the Rendezvous property is currently being used in part for agricultural, farm and ranch purposes. developer may continue that use despite the PDD zoning. It's pretty clear, guys. I think we need to drop the cattle attacks, Andy, and move on. One other thing that I'd like to address, you made some comment about the Grand Park HOA documents. Your understanding of where the HOA is overlaid over Grand Park is not correct, and you should educate yourself. Okay. The development areas that we're developing are not encumbered by the Grand Park HOA. And the homeowners understand that. They've been provided maps that show them what areas are encumbered by the Grand Park HOA. And those are the areas that are developed. The areas that are not developed get annexed into the HOA once they're developed. So get your facts straight, understand the agreements, and quit doing these wild goose chases that waste your staff's time. And frankly, they're offensive. Understand the documents and enjoy the fact that our heritage of ranching in Fraser is there and doing well, and frankly is pretty cool. I like it, and most of my homeowners like it. There's a few, 3, 4 that don't, but most of them do. Thanks. That's all.
Thank you. Updates? Anybody have any updates?
Yes, we do. Please, I will kick that off. And then we've got an update from Michael as well. We were approached, if you can bring up that picture of that equipment, we were approached by Excel Energy about a week and a half ago. Of course, we all know that Excel is saying that they don't have, capacity for new development, and they're putting a moratorium in place. They're also concerned about existing customers having sufficient pressure to provide gas throughout this next winter. It's not necessarily a problem down here in Fraser. It's a bigger problem up the hill in Winter Park. So we met with representatives from Excel, and they are proposing putting in a compressor. It's a temporary compressor. This picture that you see here is a representation of what it looks like and gives you an idea of the size. They have been in contact with the owner of the property between the liquor store and the flooring store along Highway 40, just north of pond number 2, but not in that Grand County number 1 area there. We're talking about the private land between these two businesses. They want to install that there. They're in negotiations with their property owner about putting this equipment here. They want to have this equipment up and running and in place by September the 15th. The reason being is because it takes time to pressurize. It will take time to get the system up and running, and they don't want to have a loss of pressure. I think there's a 2 or 3 month period where they have to build up on this on that pressure. So they want to make sure they have this in place by September the 15th. From a staff's perspective, I didn't see any need to fight this at all, especially if we're talking about residents in town having the ability to have pressure, sufficient gas pressure. This piece of equipment will be shipped from Canada somewhere, and we looked at our franchise agreement. There's no requirement for any kind of surety on our part, so we told that Excel that we'd be working with them to make sure they can get this. That's what the board up here.
We all need gas to happen, but 2 or 3 months to build up. Are we sure that Excel knows what they're doing? Seriously, I mean, somebody has to.
I could be characterizing that
Somebody needs to
differently.
really. I mean, Excel Energy really needs to get their act together. I mean, if it takes 2 or 3 months to build pressure up it, I mean, there's got to be something.
I don't think it's 2 or 3 months to build pressure, but they want to get in place by September.
I mean, can we find a new representative for our community? Can we reach out and say, get somebody else for the give us,
Besides Excel?
that gives us information that's good and can actually service our community. I mean, yeah,
They seem to have a lot of planning.
jeez. Unbelievable.
I've got a noise concern. I'm familiar with it.
Okay, so if you're gonna address the board, raise your hand, and then we'll get you up. And we're not taking public comment on this right now, okay? So, okay, anybody else from the board?
How loud is it?
I don't know.
They did talk about, they want to put sound dampening on there, and they will erect a structure around that. Our concern was how that would carry across the meadow, how it would bounce off the field and so forth.
Well, the people behind it,
We
you know, on the
explored
ridge.
that with them and asked them questions about it. What does that barrier look like? And apparently they take a shot from, you know, from the equipment to the highest visible parts, and then they bring the partition up to that point, so it reflects the sound back. I don't know the details of how they do that or the science behind it, but
Mhm.
they said that it would be providing sound deafening. Some partition built up on sound.
How safe is it?
This is not like what they were proposing a month or so ago about these big tanks full of gas and how they'd be injected into the system. This is simply just a compressor that increases the pressure in the existing line. So they say it's pretty safe, so.
I don't know if I can trust everything Excel says.
Exactly.
I mean,
Right, they put, I see your hand. Okay. They put down in the front range around those fracking, they put up walls. Maybe that's something that we could require, something like that, where it blocks the sound and rather than just a muffler or whatever there.
I think what their plan is to put some kind of wall up around that to muffle the sound, just like the fracking.
We won't really know till it's there and running,
Right.
so let's keep some review. I mean, some ability to have them mitigate.
Is that
more
next
sound.
picture in there as well? I think that was just a technical diagram inside.
they said 90 decibels on the thing that was behind the Pinnacle or the Holiday Inn.
Right.
And that's like, I don't know if I'm right or wrong here, but I think OSHA regulations like 80. And you have to have ear protection. So we have to figure out how loud it's going to be before we just
Right.
throw it in there and let them do what they want and say, oh, it's not working. Sorry, it's here now. You
Yeah,
know.
we should be able to shut it down if it's too.
Yeah, but then it's going to take 2 months to build pressure again.
That's that.
I mean, in January, let's do that again.
Awesome. It's just the technical schematic of
Yeah.
the equipment inside of there.
Wouldn't it be better served up at, I mean, if the issue's up the hill, wouldn't it be better served up the hill? Rather than an hour down?
I think they looked at several options. One of the options they looked at was, you know, they talked about originally was the hotel, and Safeway and such like that. They think they're actually saying ideally it would be centrally located between Warner Park and Fraser. And that's why they picked this location. That's what they told us.
Clark,
I have severe concerns about noise. First I've heard about this. I'm familiar with these things. They're very loud. County ordinance is 50 dBs at your property line, by the way. So if this thing's as loud as Katie just said it is, big problem. We're building homes directly across the street from this. That would be hugely impacted. Sound travels up. I'm extremely concerned about this location. I think this is inappropriate. Excel's failed our community. The Colorado PUC is culpable. They've been at 95% capacity since 2015. They've known about this issue. I've been on them about this issue. They've done nothing to address it. And our community and my homeowners should not be taking the burden of fixing a problem that we didn't create. On top of that, there's better locations. How about the fire department? Pretty rural, pretty much in the center of the two towns. There's no houses around it. Geez, maybe we could stick it back behind the fire department and make it work and not have a big whirring noise going across to Elk Creek condos and Cousins Meadow homeowners and the Cousins Point and the Elk Creek houses and the Meadows townhomes that we're building right now. How about the lot next to Randy's in the middle of Winter Park? It's a huge lot. put it there if the issue's there. I mean, this is about sucking gas and pressuring gas. So I'm opposed to this, and I want to solve the problems. I want to help Winter Park. I want to help everybody that is impacted by Excel's bad decision making and the Colorado PUC's bad management of their monopoly run utilities. But I don't think our homeowners should bear the burden of this. I think this is a bad idea. And I can tell you guys, if I propose something like this, you would be putting me through the ringer and telling me I want to see every single study under the sun ever done on planet Earth for one of these, how they've been built in every single place they've ever been used, and what the impacts are in every one of those locations. Wouldn't be kind of like, well, I guess we put it in and see what happens. Bad idea, guys. So come on, let's protect our community and hold some responsibility to Excel.
I think that's what I just said.
And I don't think it's the exact piece of equipment that was quoted the 90 decibels prior, is it? It's a totally different
Well,
piece of
first of all,
equipment.
and I don't mean to, you don't know what the decimal levels are, so.
Oh, I know, but for the one behind the Holiday Inn Express, we did. It did tell us that.
But
I think this is a different piece.
Exactly, I just wanted to be clear.
It sounds like, at least from what I'm hearing here, that we would like for them to explore a better location closer to their problem.
Also
Right,
tell us
right.
what the noise level
Yeah.
is, yeah.
And,
We
and
can reach out.
yeah, instead of having it in the middle of our town. So. Okay. And then let us know what they say. Are there any other updates?
Yes, I have a broadband update that the board requested. So I met with Nate Wallowitz with Northwest COG. He is spearheading the Project Thor initiative for broadband. I just want to provide a general update for that. So Mountain Parks Electric has been working to install the middle mile for fiber optic installations from Winter Park to Hot Silver Springs. They are looking to be complete with that before the snow flies this year. And then with the next step is to install the Meet Me Center, which is basically a 15 by 15 room that'll be that's currently being planned to be integrated into the new hospital going behind the foundry. And that's just going to basically house a lot of the equipment there based on how much juice we want to put through the wires is what will be put in that facility, and it can be upgraded as needed. And then once that Meet Me Center is installed in the new hospital, that's supposed to be breaking ground next year. The next step is, and simultaneously this can work if we're working with Winter Park on reaching out to some internet service providers to actually run that facility. So, and actually provide the service and start making revenues on it. Right now, there is some discussion about some funding that may be needed. DOLA is looking at providing a 50% match for these Meet Me Centers that are roughly $100,000. Depending on the agreement with the hospital. If you're looking at just raw land and building the facility and all the equipment aside, roughly $100,000. If the space can be provided in the hospital or any other facility that they can negotiate with for that space, a 15 by 15 foot space, that would of course lower the cost. But anyway, DOLA will do a 50% match for this Meet Me Center, and then it's looking for another 50% of funding, which could potentially be requested by the towns of Fraser and Winter Park to provide 25 and 25%, which for $100,000, that'd be a $25,000 deal that we're still informally kind of talking. We don't have hard specs yet on costs and final allocation from DOLA for this. And once the Meet Me Center is installed, then we have the internet service provider come in, and we're basically helping subsidize a service to get it going, which is kind of challenging in these more remote communities. Internet service providers do very well in places of very high populated areas. We're in a more rural location, so it's going to be there'll be some good negotiations for an internet service provider to come up here to really manage that broadband and sell it so that they can make revenue and potentially pay back the towns, things of that nature. So just want to provide you a general update with that. And we'll continue to get more information as this project continues.
Oh, thanks. Any other updates?
A couple of updates. as Eileen alluded earlier, the CML Policy Committee member, if we do want to change that member out, we do need to notify CML by August 28th.
Now that's Eileen.
I'll let them know it'll be Eileen again.
It's a lifetime
Yeah.
position.
And then we did approve a special event permit for the Soap Bay Italian Circus to come back to town this year for the Labor Day weekend, same location in Grant Park.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Nino in forever. Okay, any other updates? No. Motion, where's Katie?
I move to adjourn. Katie's stead.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thanks for attending, everybody.